Welcome back to Lovely Storytime, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here with us again on this exciting journey. Today we're diving into a brand new story, After Breaking Apollo's Heart. Get ready for an adventure filled with twists, emotions, and unforgettable moments. So grab your snacks, settle in, and let's explore this new tale together. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Let's get started. Cassandra met her end in a freak accident. Then some guy claiming to be the god of love popped up with a deal help him teach arrogant Apollo a lesson, and she'd get a second shot at life. How exactly simple. Steal the heart of Olympus's most gorgeous bachelor, then crush it without mercy. Make him ache with unrequited love and force him to bow to the power of desire. Cassandra's take sounds like a win for me. Let's do this. So she transformed into Daphne, daughter of a river god. When Apollo fell hard and came on strong, she bolted, leaving him in the dust. In a final gut punch, she turned into a laurel tree right before his eyes, sealing their tragic, heartbreaking end. True to his word, the god of love brought Cassandra back to life. She opened her eyes to find herself a princess of Troy. Big problem. Even without reading the Iliad, she knew Troy was doomed. The fake princess, now riddled with worry, tagged along with her mother to offer tribute at the temple. But somehow she got lost in the corridors and wandered deep into the sacred heart of the place. There a golden-haired god strummed a lyre, his aura glowing like he'd been waiting for her forever. He looked up, a smile curling his lips, and called her name Daphne. Cassandra froze. "Okay, buddy, mind explaining why you're wearing my armor laurel branch on your head?" Apollo had known from the start that Daphne wasn't as innocent as she seemed. He suspected she was up to something. But he loved her anyway. "You came to me and I lost my mind. My heart burns with desire cooled only by your breath. Chapter 1, steal Apollo's heart, then shatter it. Cold slimy snake scales pressed against her skin, slithering, tightening, squeezing. Daphne could barely breathe. The massive serpent coiled around her, leaving only her arms and head free to move. She looked up, locking eyes with the monster's golden vertical pupils. Hunger and murder gleamed in them. Fear clawed up her spine, freezing her struggles for a split second. The snake seized the moment, constricting even tighter, its writhing body inching upward, zeroing in on her fragile neck. Crack! The protective blessing shielding her was eroding under the creature's vile aura, splintering bit by bit. The python, thick as a tree trunk, reared its head, hissing and flicking its blood-red tongue in excitement. It spewed a sickly yellow-green, toxic mist from its gaping maw. Immortality was for gods, but a nymph like Daphne was at best a lesser spirit. She wouldn't age, but a grievous wound could still end her. If this kept up, the snake would strangle her and swallow her whole. Thankfully, her arms were still free. If she could force the python to loosen its grip even slightly, she might escape before her blessing shattered completely. Daphne held her breath, refusing to let the beast crush her ribcage further. Clutching her dagger, she drove it hard into the taut, straining coils of the snake's body. The blade skidded against the python's hard black scales. Daphne gritted her teeth, steadying her grip, and forced the thin edge into the crevice between scales, pressing down with all her might. The gleaming dagger sliced through the serpent's skin, carving a half-circle gash along its body, with ruthless precision. Foul, cold blood sprayed across Daphne's face. The python shrieked in pain. She blinked once, ensuring the blood didn't blur her vision. The monster tightened its coils, squeezing harder. Daphne moved faster, fiercer. Ignoring the agony of her ribs threatening to snap, she tore into the muscle beneath the snake's hide, slashing again and again, opening more wounds across its body. She wasn't about to die again. Numbly, frantically, she raised her arm and struck over and over. As she hacked at the python, oxygen starvation began to cloud her mind. Her consciousness flickered, and the source of this nightmare flashed through her thoughts. Daphne, daughter of a river god, was a shell housing a soul from another world. Her real name was Cassandra, a photographer who met her end in a freak accident during a trip. Death came too fast, faster than pain or fear. When she opened her eyes, she stood atop a vast sea of clouds. Cassandra thought she was headed for a meeting with God. Instead, a stunning teenage boy appeared wielding a golden bow and arrows. His face was flawless, his short robe intricately pleated, and a pair of wings sprouted from his back. "I am Eros, god of love and desire," he announced. Seeing Cassandra's stunned expression, he added kindly, My role is similar to what you might call Cupid. So you're a Greek god." The suspicious pretty boy nodded with a bright smile. "In your understanding, yes. Lost soul from another world, will you do me a favour? Help me with one task and I'll grant you a second chance at life." Cassandra couldn't tell if this was a dying hallucination. "What do you want me to do?" Eros's voice lilted with gleeful melody. "Steal Apollo's heart, then trample his affection and abandon him. Make the proud and mighty son of Leto writhe in the agony of unrequited love, forcing him to bow to the power of love to my power." Cassandra's knowledge of Greek mythology was shaky at best. She couldn't even name all 12 Olympian gods, only vaguely aware of their messy personal lives. Apollo? Was he the sun god, or the god of light, or something? Eros chimed in helpfully. Apollo is one of the twin children of Zeus, king of the gods, and the goddess Leto. Known as the Radiant One, he banishes evil and injustice, governs healing and purification, and protects music and poetry. He's a master archer, a guardian of youth, and arguably the most powerful of Zeus's many divine children. A jack of all trades sounding invincible. So why did Eros want to mess with him? Cassandra's curiosity flared briefly before fading. The squabbles of gods were none of her business. If Eros was telling the truth, if she could trade service for a chance to live again, she'd be lying if she said she wasn't tempted. But her gaze drifted to the bow and arrows slung across Eros's back. "I've heard about your arrows. One shot and Apollo would fall uncontrollably in love with anyone you choose. In other words, did the god of desire really need a random soul like her for his revenge?" Eros pouted. "Apollo has the gift of prophecy. Though it's not fully matured, it's still a pain. He knows I'm out to punish him and will dodge my influence. But he might not see a future tied to a soul from another world. That's why I need you. If I fail, will I be punished?" She'd heard Greek gods could be pretty petty. Eros blinked, his charming yet wicked smile deepening. "Your temporary body has a time limit. Over time it'll gradually revert to its plant-like nature. If your body collapses and you've fulfilled my task, I'll send your soul to a new life. If not—" He sighed with mock regret. "You'll return to the silent black mists of the afterlife." Cassandra weighed the pros and cons and made her choice fast. Nothing to lose, everything to gain. She agreed without hesitation. Eros nodded, pleased. Almost instantly Cassandra's vision blurred. "A tip," he whispered. "Delphi is Apollo's next stop." His voice faded like bursting bubbles. When she opened her eyes, she was in the world of Greek mythology, born as a nymph, the youngest of the 12 daughters of the river god Ladon. Daphne snapped out of her daze, biting her lip. She'd worked hard to convince her father and sisters to let her travel alone, but when she reached Delphi, a monstrous black python awaited her. As for Apollo, not a trace of him. Forget the unreliable god, for now she had to survive. Nymphs might look delicate, but they were inhuman beings with divine power, often hunting alongside gods. When they turned fierce, ordinary beasts and mortal men became prey. This snake was brutally strong, though. Daphne didn't expect to kill it, only to fight for a slim chance to escape. The python's muscles, tensed to crush its prey, were terrifyingly powerful but vulnerable. Under Daphne's relentless slashes, its body soon brimmed with bloody, mangled wounds. Then a sinister crack rang out. The python's toxic mist finally shattered the protective blessing from her river godfather. In that instant, the full force of the snake's coils hit her body, nearly suffocating her. Cursing silently, Daphne plunged the dagger into the snake's flesh deeper than ever before. The blade tore through scales and muscle, scraping bone with a teeth-grinding screech. The python howled in agony, its grip loosening just a fraction. Daphne seized the moment, using the dagger for leverage to wrench herself free. The crushing pressure on her lungs vanished. She'd done it. She stepped onto the outermost coil, ignoring the snake's reaction, and bolted forward. The blood-soaked scales were wet and slick. She stumbled, nearly sliding to the ground in the foul-smelling liquid. A chill shot down her spine as a sinister presence closed in a tangible, bone-shaking killing, intent like a mist with substance. Something cold and wet flicked across her back. Daphne realized it was the snake's massive tongue. "Get down!" A clear shout came from ahead. Without thinking, Daphne dropped flat to the ground. Blinding light flooded her vision, tears welling instinctively. Just before she shut her eyes, she glimpsed something hurtling toward her, grazing her head as it passed. Thud. A sharp sound of flesh and bone being pierced. Cool, rancid blood misted the air. A silver arrow skewered the python's skull, hurling the monster backward. The bowstring hummed with a low buzz as another arrow flew, striking the snake's heart with deadly precision, ending it for good. The creature's resentful wail startled distant mountain birds. The python haunting Delphi was dead. Daphne lay panting on the ground. Her vision was still blurry. The first thing she saw clearly was a pair of feet in golden sandals, though details were hazy. She tried to push herself up, but a sharp pain exploded in her chest. Gasping, she swayed about to collapse. Someone caught her, supporting her against their shoulder. She tried to look up, but a hand pressed gently on her head, as if keeping her from seeing their face. Daphne first noticed a cool, distinct aura. Unlike the snake's chilling malice, this presence was solemn and serene. Her body instinctively recognized it as belonging to a true god, laced with the distant fragrance of divine nectar. Then an unbelievable warmth flowed from the hand on her head, spreading through her body, easing every ache and healing the wounds from her struggle. A miracle of healing. Her heart raced. Slowly she lifted her gaze. The golden-haired young man was strikingly handsome, a radiant halo glowing behind him, almost too bright to look at. She blinked rapidly, and the dazzling light dimmed slightly. She saw his deep blue eyes, the ring of immortal gold around his pupils, and her own reflection in them. Daphne knew she looked a mess, hair-dishevelled body smeared with snake blood and dirt. Yet the golden-haired, blue-eyed god's pupils widened as he gazed at her. He reached out his fingers, gently wiping blood from her cheek, his voice low and unreadable. "Is it you?" Chapter 2, Restless Dishonest Eyes. Apollo. His hair flowed like molten gold, his silver bow never missed its mark, and a mere touch healed her wounds. He matched every rumour to the letter. It had to be Apollo. Daphne stood frozen, overwhelmed by the divine aura radiating from him, her thoughts grinding to a halt. This wasn't her first encounter with a god of this world. After all, in theory, Daphne's mother was Gaia, the earth goddess, and her father was a river god. Divine blood coursed through this temporary body. But aside from a gentle sigh at her birth, she'd never met her ancient revered mother. As for her father, Ladon, he could hardly muster an ounce of authority in front of his 12 wildly different daughters. They often drove him to his wits' end, making him seem less like a god, and more like an overly indulgent mortal dad. Apollo was different. He was a new generation god with a home atop the snowy peaks of Olympus. Power status, beauty lineage, wealth. He was born with everything mortals and even other gods coveted. He was used to looking down on all creatures of the dark earth below. Being above others was second nature to him. Save for his father Zeus, he likely never bowed his head to anyone. And now Apollo stared at her, his expression blank, his deep blue eyes piercing as if they could peer into the future itself. Daphne wasn't naturally timid, but the pressure of an Olympian god's gaze pushed her beyond what reason could handle. It was the gap between a sky-dwelling deity and a mere nymph of the waters. His sacred aura, rich with the same divine nectar's fragrance, was so potent, her nymph body instinctively wanted to yield. Worse, his eyes, his face, his entire form were beautiful beyond reason. Daphne tried to look away, but couldn't, a chill rising uncontrollably in her chest. She felt like a moth that had foolishly fluttered into Apollo's line of sight, pinned mid-air by his casual glance, liable to be incinerated by his divine radiance at any moment. And for a second chance at life, she had to make this transcendent being fall in love with her. Not just that she had to make his love so deep it couldn't withstand betrayal. For the first time, Daphne truly grasped the impossible weight of Eros's task. Then Apollo reached for her. His fingers brushed her cheek, leaving a smear of dark red snake blood on his fingertips. Daphne trembled, snapping out of her dazed awe. Frustration over her ruined plans surged to the forefront. She vaguely recalled stereotypes about Greek mythology from her past life romance here, often boiled down to love at first sight. In her years as a river god's daughter, every story she'd heard confirmed it. Beauty was seen as an outward sign of inner virtue. This world rewarded the lovely and punished the plain. So to fulfill Eros's mission, her first impression on Apollo was everything. Her body was stunning, and Daphne had meticulously planned several scenarios to leverage her looks and surroundings, aiming for a breathtaking debut in Apollo's eyes. But the three fates had other ideas orchestrating this disastrous meeting. What a mess. Eros was a lousy boss. He'd told her to come to Delphi but failed to mention the monster lurking here. Sure, this could loosely count as a hero saves the damsel moment, but in classic tales the rescued beauty remained radiant even in a monster's lair. She definitely shouldn't be like Daphne, brandishing a blood-dripping dagger one second, then sprawled pathetically at her target's feet, the next hair a mess face smeared with dirt reeking of snake blood. Apollo's lips moved, murmuring something too soft to catch. "Pardon me, did you say something?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, his brow furrowed as if something annoyed him, and he countered, "Who are you? Why are you here?" His wary tone reminded her of a lord interrogating a suspicious trespasser. His gaze shifted abruptly too abruptly. The intense focus that felt like it could swallow her whole vanished. In an instant she went from a pinned moth to something as mundane as a tree or a weed in his eyes. Daphne could even sense he thought she was standing too close. He didn't say it, but he clearly wanted her to back off to a polite distance. Funny considering he'd approached her first. The worst part, she couldn't afford to snap at him. "Not yet. I'm Daphne, daughter of Gaia, and the river god Ladon," she said, stepping back 2 paces and speaking with devout respect. "I heard there was a sweet sacred spring nearby and came seeking it, but before I could find it that snake attacked me. Thank you for saving me. Forgive my presumption, but you must be the radiant son of Leto." "I am Apollo, son of Zeus and Leto," he replied, his tone still blatantly cool. He slung his silver bow over his shoulder without looking at her, tossing another interrogative question. "Ladon's rivers flow in Arcadia far from here. Why did you travel alone to meet you? Just not in this less than dreamy way." Daphne's mind raced for a plausible excuse, but then Apollo's gaze snapped back to her. His eyes were striking their blue so pure it rivaled synthetic pigments, from her past world unmarred by the faint veins typical of blue irises. Her heart skipped. She scrapped her half-baked story and hesitated before answering. "Unlike my sisters, I've always struggled to draw power from rivers and waters. I can't wield divine arts like they do." She glanced at her palm, a self-deprecating shadow crossing her face. "My father said a blessed spring should nurture a spirit's power, but the springs in Arcadia blessed by him do nothing for me. So I left to seek unclaimed springs to draw strength from." She wasn't telling the whole truth, but she wasn't lying either. Daphne truly couldn't command river powers like her sisters. She couldn't manipulate water, couldn't stay submerged long without surfacing for air, and walking on water was her limit. She knew why. Eros had been clear her body's essence was plant-based. Plants needed water, but they weren't like true river god daughters, who could shapeshift into fish or birds. Eros's disguise was clever. Ladon never suspected a thing. He just assumed his youngest inherited more of Gaia's earthy blood, lacking the knack for sensing rivers. Daphne's excuse for leaving Arcadia was to find a cure for her defect. Even if Apollo bothered to check her story with Ladon, he'd find no cracks. But Apollo seemed uninterested, giving only a curt nod to acknowledge her explanation. "What was that python?" she asked. He kept it brief. Its name was Python. "It's plagued this land for ages. I didn't know it was here," Daphne murmured, mentally cursing Eros again. With Python dead, their conversation stalled. The gentle gurgle of water in the forest depths grew clearer. Sticking to her spring-seeker persona, Daphne glanced toward the sound. Apollo caught it and said, "That spring feeds a dolphin-shaped pool, hence the name Delphi. I'll build a temple of prophecy here where mortals from all lands will seek oracles. In other words, hands off my spring. Talk about territorial. Should she offer to serve at his Delphi temple?" The bold idea flickered, but was quickly dismissed. Apollo was clearly wary of her acting. Too eager would only make her seem shadier, so Daphne bit her lip as if suppressing disappointment. Then she smiled graciously, conceding, "You slew the monster haunting this place, so your will takes precedence. Besides, it's the spring's greatest honor to serve your temple." She moved to leave. "I'll never forget your life-saving kindness, radiant Apollo. Allow me to return another day with offerings for your temple." Her love-at-first-sight plan had crashed and burned. Time for a detour. Today's dishevelled first impression could set the stage for a dazzling reappearance, later the contrast working in her favour. Apollo didn't react. Daphne took it as permission, respectfully stepping back before turning away. In her past life, and now, she never lingered on setbacks. If anything, she felt oddly upbeat. She'd made contact with Apollo, step one was complete. Cause for celebration. Apollo stood still. He expected the nymph to glance back, but she didn't. For some reason that bugged him, and his gaze followed her unbidden. Her braid had come loose golden brown hair spilling to her waist, a tangled mess. Strands matted with snake blood clumped together, yet the whole looked like a lush cascade of seaweed. Her curly ends swayed with her light steps, her graceful neck and slender arms peeking through the golden threads. She was unlucky her shoes were gone, forcing her to walk barefoot on the forest floor. But she didn't care. When she stepped on a twig, she only shrugged. When a sharp pebble jabbed her sole, she hopped on one leg a few times as if that erased the pain. Her filthy skirt fluttered with the motion bunching below her knees. Her feet and toes were caked with dried blood and dirt, but her ankles and calves gleamed white, almost glowing. It felt like something he shouldn't see, and that made it breathtaking. A prophetic vision struck then. When Apollo sensed events tied to his or Olympus's fate, foresight came as fragmented scenes barging into his mind. His prophetic powers were incomplete, so he couldn't chase details, only glimpse images. When he saved her, a spark of intuition had flickered in his mind's depths. Now that vague premonition expanded into a scene, the same one he'd seen before. In a future near or far, he was running, chasing someone across the dark earth. He couldn't see who, only catching a flash of a plain skirt and a fleeting glimpse of an ankle. That tiny sliver of fabric, like a dove's feather, ignited a wildfire in him, like sparks on dry brush. His body burned and trembled with overwhelming emotion. He heard Eros's smug chuckle, but Apollo ignored the infuriating god of desire. Yearning drowned reason, panic swept away caution. He only knew he had to catch up before it was too late. Apollo snapped back to reality, pinching his brow, his expression stiff. Those feelings in the vision weren't like him at all. Even experiencing the premonition a second time, he couldn't believe he'd ever become so desperate. He refused to let himself sink that low. Fate's threads weren't fixed. Even if the three fates allowed Eros's petty revenge to make him suffer love's pain, he could dodge it. Besides, the skirt's owner might not be her. She was just a suspiciously timed frail nymph, frail but dubious. She acted meek and respectful, but that wasn't her true nature. When Apollo reached the snake's lair, he'd spotted her trapped in Python's coils. He'd never seen a girl so feral. She swung her dagger with near madness, blood spraying everywhere, yet her strength was too weak to land a fatal blow. Her struggle lacked the lethal grace of his sister Artemis's hunts. A sharpened weapon was most dangerous in a child's hands. Her dagger was sharper, brimming with aggression. When she met his gaze, he almost thought her eyes were burning, her irises were too light. Restless, dishonest eyes. She wasn't the type Apollo thought he'd fall for. If Eros was setting a trap of desire, he'd pick someone completely unlike her. Yet she walked away light and swift without a backward glance, as if she truly wanted nothing from him. That carefree, regretless silhouette inexplicably irked him. He prided himself on mercy, and wouldn't force a barefoot girl fresh from danger to trek on. So Apollo stepped forward and called her name for the first time, Daphne. Chapter 3, Absolutely Insane. Daphne? She stopped and turned, her face radiating pure, innocent surprise. Is there something else? My Lord Apollo fell into an odd silence. Daphne got the distinct feeling he was regretting calling her back. She blinked her lively, pale green eyes, but said nothing. Whoever spoke first owned the moment. The son of Leto's lips tightened almost imperceptibly. Finally, he said. There's another sweet spring on this peninsula. Daphne paused, caught off guard. Oh, you mean Telphusa's spring? Telphusa was a nymph from nearby lands, guardian of a clear, pristine spring, her home and the source of her power. Perhaps the lofty son of Zeus wasn't versed in nymph etiquette, so Daphne explained calmly, that spring belongs to Telphusa. I can't demand she let me try to draw power from her source. She pitied my situation, so as a gesture, she pointed me toward Delphi. Apollo's brow furrowed. The expression amplified his divine presence, making Daphne's heart skip instinctively before she inwardly grumbled. What had she said to tick him off? She guided you to Delphi, he asked, as if double-checking. Daphne frowned, puzzled. Yes, to avoid suspicion, she'd used the same story with Telphusa about seeking a spring to cure her ailment. Her real goal was different, so when Telphusa refused to help heal her, Daphne wasn't surprised or upset, but Apollo wasn't done, and Telphusa didn't warn you this was Python's lair. No, Daphne's eyes widened, her lips clamping shut. It hit her like a delayed thunderbolt. Telphusa knew this land well. She had to know a giant python haunted the dense forests of Parnassus's coastal cliffs. In other words, Daphne might have been set up by her fellow nymph. Her stunned realization registered with Apollo, and for the first time, he looked amused. A faint, sly smile flickered across his face, gone in an instant. That tiny smirk was like a crack in his cold, stern mask, revealing a spark of vibrant fire beneath, for all his haughty, entitled air. Apollo was young. His experience matched his youthful appearance. He was still in the phase of roaming the world, earning worship through divine feats. Why else would he come to Delphi to build a temple for prophecies? Daphne suddenly felt a strange urge to chuckle, like she was watching a teenager pretend to be wise beyond his years. "You were tricked by Telphusa," Apollo said bluntly, his face serious again. Daphne opened her mouth to defend herself, but realized there was nothing to say. She hadn't been in these woods long before the snake attacked. Between the B-movie level fight for survival and her mission-critical target showing up, everything happened so fast she hadn't stopped to question why she'd run into a monster. Before today, this world had been kind to her. Ladon's children got along harmoniously. In Arcadia, demigods and deities she met were friendly. On her journey, she'd been lucky, facing no trouble and even receiving help from strangers. It lulled her into thinking this world, though vastly different from her modern one, wasn't particularly dangerous. Delphi's a fair distance from Telphusa's spring. Maybe she didn't know about the python. Daphne's voice trailed off under Apollo's gaze. She pushed on, or maybe she just forgot to warn me. Apollo raised an eyebrow, his expression practically screaming, "You buy that Daphne preferred to see the best in people. I just think, as fellow nymphs, Telphusa has no reason to wish me harm." The golden-haired god's lips twitched, but he didn't smile like before. Instead, he asked, "What do you plan to do?" Daphne hadn't expected Apollo to care about her opinion. Was he testing her character Ladon had drilled into her before she left if she met an unfamiliar god, especially an Olympian? She had to tread carefully. One wrong move could anger a fickle deity and bring dire consequences. But a chance to get closer to Apollo was right in front of her. She couldn't let it slip. From his earlier reactions, this arrogant son of Zeus didn't exactly like her, but he didn't outright dislike her either. After she'd shown a gap in her reasoning, his demeanour had softened noticeably. Maybe a touch of clumsiness was the angle she should lean into with him. Even gods, it seemed, enjoyed flexing their omniscience over a weaker opposite sex. "I want to confront Telphusa," Daphne said. "If she deliberately hid Python's presence, intending for me to become snake food." She let her natural awe of an Olympian god tighten her voice, but her twinkling eyes betrayed eager hope. "Radiant Apollo, son of Leto, would you bear witness and ensure I receive fair justice?" She was already bracing for a refusal, mentally drafting how to plead further. Fine. Wait, that easy? It took Daphne a half-second to process. Then joy lit up her face. Apollo's mind went blank for a moment, and he wasn't sure what he'd been thinking. Then he realized he was staring at a smudge of dirt on her cheek. Her beaming face, the glow of happiness, the hideous, glaring smudge. It was like a wrong note in a perfect melody, stirring a strange restlessness in his chest. Daphne nearly shivered under his suddenly intense gaze. She was certain he'd spotted something unpleasant on her face. His desire to erase it made the golden ring around his pupils flare, his divine aura surging. For a heartbeat, Daphne could barely breathe, her legs nearly giving out. She half expected him to purify her, and whatever offended him, into oblivion. Desperate to break the eerie, dangerous silence, she blurted, "So?" Apollo's golden lashes fluttered, like butterflies startled by her voice. In an instant, his gaze slid off her face, calm and unreadable. "We're going to Telphusa's spring now," he declared, dictating her next move. At that moment, shadows swept over the forest clearing. The sound of neighing mixed with flapping wings as two snow-white Pegasi pulled a golden chariot, soaring down like a bird, light and swift. Pegasi hooves spawned springs if they touched earth, so they hovered an arm's length above the ground, quietly awaiting their master. Daphne had never seen such mythical creatures up close. Only Olympians, dwelling among the clouds, rode Pegasi-drawn chariots. She stared, entranced. The horses' sleek limbs and necks were powerful yet elegant, their eyes clear, their flawless wings half-folded obediently, their tips shimmering with pearlescent light. Snapping out of it, she found Apollo standing on the chariot, looking down at her, planning to walk. She took a half-step forward but paused before climbing aboard. Her gaze flicked to her filthy feet, then her hands and skirt. The Pegasi's fur and wings were blindingly white, and she'd almost forgotten what a wreck she was. Climbing aboard reeking of snake blood would be a disaster. Their relationship wasn't remotely close enough to outweigh the disgust of her grime. It'd leave a lasting impression, the kind that tanked her score into the negatives. "I can't soil your chariot," she said. The golden-haired, blue-eyed nymph suddenly turned docile, tilting her face up to him, her voice clear and her expression serene. Apollo frowned. He couldn't decide which he disliked more, her meek, respectful facade or her untamed, feral core. "You're building a temple in Delphi. I can't taint its spring with snake blood, nor can I trouble you to wait. Luckily, I'm a fast runner. It won't take long to reach Telphusa's spring. I won't keep you waiting." Before Apollo could respond, Daphne bolted. She was fast, agile as a startled deer, her figure blurring into the green shade in moments. Apollo's slightly raised hand fell to his side, his fingers reflexively clenching at nothing. He froze, then relaxed his grip. He and his twin sister Artemis wielded powers of healing and purification. Another facet of their divinity could unleash plagues, snuffing out mortal lives. Their divine essence instinctively recoiled from filth and evil. At least this nymph had some self-awareness. Did she really think he'd let someone that filthy ride in his chariot? Absolutely insane. Chapter 4. She needs him to love her, so she can abandon him. Daphne sprinted. Terrified Apollo might lose patience and leave without her. Telphusa's spring lay just ahead when a deafening boom shook the air. It was as if a colossal object had crashed down. The ground quaked, sending twigs and leaves raining down in a rustling cascade. Was it her imagination, or did she hear a sharp, furious roar? Daphne quickened her pace, cutting through a shortcut toward the sound, ignoring the stinging scratches from bushes and branches grazing her ankles and arms. The dense forest abruptly ended. Daphne squinted, adjusting to the sudden burst of light. The source of the noise had to be close. Her vision cleared, and she froze, stunned. Where a tranquil forest spring had stood half a day ago, there was now only a mound of jagged stones. A shadow loomed overhead. Apollo descended from the sky, his Pegasi-drawn chariot gliding down. Every inch of his skin shimmered with faint golden light, the radiant halo unique to immortal gods. His overwhelming aura was even stronger than before, his flawless face expressionless, as if he'd just unleashed his wrath. He looked like a statue glaring down at ants from a lofty altar. Daphne fought her body's instinctive trembling and asked as calmly as she could, "I heard a massive noise. Please, tell me what happened here." Apollo's tone was casual, almost dismissive. "Telphusa refused to admit her guilt and dared to defy me, so I hurled a nearby cliff to seal this place." A cliff? Daphne was speechless, unable to even picture the scene. "What about Telphusa?" she finally managed, her voice sharp with tension. Apollo's expression didn't flicker. He didn't even blink. "I don't know." A chill shot up Daphne's neck. Even if Telphusa had harboured inexplicable malice, possibly luring Daphne to her death, she'd vanished beneath this stone heap before Daphne could confront her. In that moment, fear consumed Daphne. Apollo's divine power was terrifying, but his controlled, effortless anger was worse. He spoke of tossing an entire cliff as if it were a pebble skipped across a riverbank. His flat "I don't know" was more chilling than a blunt "I executed Telphusa." He didn't know because he didn't care. A god's punishment had been delivered. The fate of the punished held no interest for him. It was the indifference born of a power gap wider than the divide between sky and earth, the arrogance of the mighty. Confusion followed her fear. Why was Apollo so angry? Why punish Telphusa so harshly? It couldn't be because of his promise to give Daphne fair justice. Could it for her? No way. She struggled to believe Apollo would go out of his way for her. They'd just met, and the haughty son of Leto showed no signs of love at first sight. Glancing at him, she saw him still hovering high above, his face blank as he stared down at her. Daphne dismissed the absurd thought. The world didn't hand out love without reason, unless Eros's golden arrow was involved. If it wasn't about her, had Telphusa done something else to enrage Apollo? I came to Delphi because of Telphusa's lies, Apollo said suddenly, as if her confusion was too obvious. I planned to build my temple near her spring. She claimed the mortals and their caravans visiting her waters would disturb the sacred peace, and strongly recommended the land near Delphi's spring. She praised it endlessly, saying it was worthier of my temple, but never mentioned Python's lair. Daphne's pale green eyes flickered. She wanted to speak, but bit her lip. Even if she doubted Telphusa was foolish enough to think a snake could take down Zeus's son, Apollo's demeanour suggested the truth was exactly what she didn't want to believe. Telphusa's actions stemmed from selfish desire, he continued, his voice icy. She coveted the power of her spring and the offerings from worshippers seeking healing. Her deliberate deception was already a grave sin. When I confronted her, she insulted my mother, Leto, with vile words. Apollo's tone turned sharp as he concluded, as the punisher of injustice. It was my duty to judge her. Daphne bowed her head. Praise be to your judgment. There's more. His voice drew closer as he loosened the reins, guiding the Pegasi lower. She froze, startled. Telphusa admitted she intentionally hid Python's existence from you, hoping you'd vanish in the snake's hunting grounds. Daphne sifted through her memories for any hint of Telphusa's deceit. In her mind, Telphusa had sharp, angular features and a tall, wiry frame with prominent joints. Her manner was brisk yet composed, neither servile nor arrogant. She didn't fit this world's beauty standards. But Daphne had been reminded of models she'd worked with in her past life for certain brands. She was drawn to unique charisma and had felt an instant fondness for Telphusa. Clearly, she'd misjudged her. After a moment, Daphne asked, "Did she say why she wanted me dead?" Apollo frowned, as if recalling Telphusa's heated words irritated him. He had no patience to repeat the nymph's rant. Does the reason matter? Maybe it didn't. Telphusa had tried to kill her, and now she'd been punished. But it all ended before Daphne arrived, leaving her with a hollow sense of loss, not even the satisfaction of revenge. After all, Telphusa's fate wasn't really about her. Apollo's words revealed his priorities. Telphusa's attempt to deceive him and her disrespect toward the gods were the primary crimes. His wrath had little to do with Daphne. If a nymph named Nymphta had been the one misled, Apollo would have delivered the same punishment to protect his and Leto's untouchable dignity. Daphne couldn't help but wonder if she ever angered Apollo. Would he judge her with the same cold detachment? After all, what she was tasked to do to him was far bolder and more disrespectful than Telphusa's crimes. She needed him to love her, so she could abandon him, but she had no other choice. If she stuck to her original plan, returning later to thank him for saving her, his temple might already be built by then. He might not even remember a minor nymph like her, let alone spare an avatar or a wisp of his divine attention. She had to adapt, swallow her weaker emotions, and stay close to him as long as possible. So, Daphne stepped back, bowed respectfully, and wove humble words. "You not only saved me but delivered just judgment. Though my power is weak, please allow me to repay your kindness." Silence stretched for what felt like forever. She held her bowed pose, unmoving. If not for the soft rustle of wind through the Pegasi's wings, she might have thought Apollo had ditched her. Meanwhile, the golden-haired, blue-eyed son of Zeus gazed at her silently. He saw it all, her fingers nervously clutching her skirt, her pale face, her rapidly blinking lashes, her tense shoulders, and the faint trembling she couldn't hide. She was afraid. That was normal. She was too weak. This was normal. Before, her gaze had been too lively, too curious, sometimes even teasing with a sparkling glint, lacking proper reverence. Strangely, though, her newfound fear now irritated Apollo. Without thinking, he wanted to erase that emotion, to push away the source of these odd ripples. "So," he replied coldly, "I don't need anything from you, and there's nothing you can do for me. Saving you was incidental to slaying Python, as was dealing with Telphusa. Go back to Arcadia. Nymph, you can pass my greetings to your father, Ladon," Daphne wanted to plead, but as she looked up and met Apollo's eyes, she quickly lowered her head again. His demeanour brooked no argument. Apollo clearly wasn't used to being defied. "If that's the case, please at least allow me to offer a bouquet of blessings and gratitude when you lay the foundation for your Delphi temple. Though it's small, I want to express my thanks as soon as possible." She yielded so readily that Apollo paused before answering. "Fine. 2 days from now, at sunrise, I'll gather chosen mortal followers to lay the foundation for my new earthly abode where Python fell." Before Daphne could thank him, he added, "After that, return to Arcadia." Why was he so eager to send her packing? Daphne explained respectfully. "It's not time for me to go home yet. Since I haven't found a spring to cure my flaw, I must continue my journey." Apollo frowned, pointing out bluntly, "The dark earth may be your mother, but it's full of dangers. Next time you face a monster you can't defeat. The goddess of luck might not favour you like today." Daphne smiled. "Then I'll pray to my mother and the goddess Tyche every day." Apollo looked like he wanted to say more, but he pressed his shapely lips together and turned his head indifferently. The golden-haired god tugged the reins, and the Pegasi neighed softly, spreading their wings. The gleaming chariot soared away. Daphne shifted her gaze, silently studying the pile of stones before her. This was the fate of angering an Olympian god. She had to remember the stakes of her mission. After a long moment, she turned toward a nearby stream, not looking back. By the time Daphne washed the dirt and blood from her body at the stream, feeling refreshed, dusk was settling in. She expertly found a cave to spend the night, gathering vines and branches to set traps at the entrance to ward off beasts. Then, facing the cave's opening, she raised her arms and called softly, "Eros, god of love and desire, born from the ocean's foam, I beseech your ear. I beg your presence, soon." The sound of flapping wings echoed. The beautiful, boyish love god emerged straight through the cave wall. Daphne jumped at his entrance, and Eros laughed, clearly delighted by his prank. He was far older than Apollo, born even before Zeus, yet his mischievous personality hadn't changed in eons. Oddly, this made Daphne less afraid of her employer. Most of the time, Eros was approachable. She could skip formalities, as she had at their first meeting, and he didn't seem to mind, at least on the surface. "You've met him? How'd it go?" Eros asked, grinning. "He's not that interested in me and seems pretty wary. I didn't dare push to stay near him," Daphne said, cutting to the chase, "so I need help." Eros pulled an exaggerated, fake pity face before asking, "What kind of help?" "Exactly. 2 days from now, at sunrise. I'll offer a bouquet at the founding of his Delphi temple. He'll definitely be there. I want you to show up with your bow and arrows." Eros shook his head, sighing good-naturedly. "I told you, if I tried to shoot him with a golden arrow, his prophetic eye might catch it in advance. If that weren't the case, I wouldn't need you for this plan, right?" Daphne shook her head too. "No, I don't want you to shoot him with a golden arrow." Eros caught her meaning first, his face lighting up with surprise and intrigue. "Please pierce my heart with your golden arrow of love. Make me fall for him." Chapter 5. The clear twang of a bowstring shakes the air. At dawn, Daphne clutched a clay vase as she moved forward. The pre-sunrise forest was shrouded in white mist, the light dim, paths indistinguishable, the silence eerily profound. Knowing her destination lay toward the sea, she followed the distant rhythm of crashing waves. Every so often, she glanced down at the bouquet in the vase, triple-checking the flowers hadn't scattered or fallen. This bouquet hadn't come easy. Apollo would appear around sunrise, but the timing was tricky. Many flowers wouldn't bloom until the sun's chariot breached the horizon. As Gaia's daughter, she could have used a small spell to coax petals open early. But she opted for a more painstaking approach. Daphne had roamed half the night with a glowing quartz stone, searching for beautiful flowers that bloomed in darkness. She hoped Apollo would notice the effort. The sound of waves striking the cliffs grew clearer, a steady, rhythmic pulse. As she neared her destination, the drumming in her chest, once synced with the tide, quickened, falling out of step. Then she glimpsed the outline of Python's skeletal remains and, almost simultaneously, heard voices. She darted back into the tree shadows, peering toward the sound under the greyish dawn light. A dozen soldiers stood guard, warily scanning the surroundings, protectively circling two young men. The pair looked alike, likely brothers, their cloaks dyed with costly hues that stood out even in the gloom, marking them as nobility. They were mortals, probably Apollo's chosen followers, not wanting to complicate her plan. Daphne stayed hidden in the shade, waiting for Apollo to appear before making her move. The morning mist nearly dissipated, and Helios's sun chariot was moments from leaping from the underworld to race across the sky. One brother whispered skeptically, "Sunrise is almost here, and nothing's happened. Are you sure it wasn't just a weird dream?" The younger shook his head. "I received a divine oracle in my dream from Zeus and Leto's son, commanding us to come here at sunrise to serve." The other, still doubtful, relented grudgingly. "Fine. If nothing happens once the sun's fully up, we head back to the city. This cliff is desolate, the sea wind's harsh, and there's a strange rotting stench in the air. Staying too long's bad for our health." Before he finished, a blinding light erupted from the sky, painting everyone's vision a flawless white. Sacred radiance burned away the last traces of night, the air thinning and heating as if unable to bear the arrival of a colossal presence. Each gust of wild wind proclaimed the newcomer's identity, stirring awe and urging witnesses to submit. The mortals hurriedly bowed their heads, avoiding the god's gaze. Some collapsed to their knees, overwhelmed by the pressure. Apollo's aura was several times stronger than when he'd saved her. Even Daphne struggled, clutching the vase tightly and leaning against a tree for support, desperate not to drop the fruit of her sleepless night. "I am Apollo." The Olympian god's melodious voice rang out, calm yet laced with menace. "Zeus, king of the gods, is my father. Leto, the dark-robed goddess, is my mother. Trophonius and Agamedes, sons of Erginus, king of the Minions. It was I who summoned you to this place on Mount Parnassus." Daphne's eyes adjusted to the glare, and she stole a glance, catching the mortal princes stiffen as their names were called. This dazzling, high-impact entrance was simple, direct, and effective. Whatever Apollo commanded next, the brothers wouldn't dare refuse. She couldn't help but suspect he'd been nearby all along, deliberately choosing a dramatic moment to appear. "Radiant son of Zeus." "What is your command?" one asked. My sight unravels the patterns woven by fate. I see the future and, through it, the present and past. This place, called Delphi, was once claimed by the serpent Python. I have slain the beast, and its spring and land will nurture another of my earthly abodes. Only then did Daphne notice that Python's stone-laid lair, its corpse, and the scattered stumps and deadwood were gone. All that remained was a wide clearing ringed by towering trees. The soil covering the rock was damp, free of weeds, proof that every inch had been purified to erase the serpent's venom and breath. All this transformation had occurred in the blink of Apollo's arrival. The power of purification. Her gaze dropped, her mind flashing to the heap of stones over Telphusa's spring. "I will build a magnificent temple here to deliver prophecies to mortals," Apollo declared, slowly pacing the clearing, measuring it with his steps. Incredibly, each step left a deep, straight groove in the earth, as if carved by a giant blade. First, the outline of the plaza before the temple's entrance. Mortal devotees will bring offerings of cattle, sheep, and spices to Delphi seeking oracles. They'll come from every corner of the dark earth, from the rugged Peloponnese, fertile Crete, my birthplace Delos, the far lands of Europa, or the countless islands cradled by ocean currents. My prophetic fame will echo across the world. Next, the grand hall facing the vast sea. Be they kings or commoners, all will seek my guidance before momentous decisions. Then, the adjacent structures. To those who offer sacrifices, I will descend through chosen mortal vessels in this temple, speaking infallible counsel through their tongues. Trophonius, Agamedes, I entrust you with building this temple. Fulfill your duty, and your names will endure alongside it, remembered by generations. When Apollo stopped speaking and stood still, the ground bore the clear outline of a temple complex. This was laying the foundation. A moment of awestruck, fearful silence followed. Then the princes mustered their courage, voices rising in praise. Yes, we obey your command, glory to you, radiant son of Leto. Apollo nodded faintly. Return to Minyas and prepare. I will ensure your journey is safe. The mortals left, trembling. Beyond the forest, the sun chariot had risen, painting the sea a deep, crystalline blue. Apollo seemed drawn to the morning cliffside view, turning to face it. From her spot in the trees, Daphne could only see his back, a deep purple cloak draped from his shoulders, its edges adorned with glinting metal threads and gems. Daphne raised a hand to shield her eyes from the reflected light, but the god himself outshone it all. Even the dawn's radiance couldn't surpass the living, molten glow of his golden hair, stirred by the sea breeze. His arms and legs, exposed by his ivory sleeveless tunic, were long yet defined, blending beauty with strength. His skin was smoother than any statue, faintly haloed in sunlight, yet it radiated an otherworldly aura, a constant reminder of his immortal divinity. Specks of golden sunlight filtered through the branches, dusting the ground and Daphne, who held her vase and gazed at Apollo against the sea. For a rare moment, she felt a spark of her past life's urge to lift a camera and capture a breathtaking scene. But this world had no cameras, and she couldn't just be a bystander. With that, Daphne refocused, only to face a new dilemma when should she step out to avoid ruining the moment and disturbing Apollo. As she hesitated, Apollo suddenly turned, looking straight at her hiding spot. She hugged the vase tighter, refusing to second-guess herself, and stepped out of the shadows into the warm, bright dawn. Apollo froze for a split second. Maybe he hadn't expected her to show up lugging a forearm-length clay vase. Praise your divine works, Daphne said, bowing humbly. Silver-bowed god of oracles, I've come as promised, bearing flowers to offer you. The white blooms, opened in the night, still glistened with nocturnal dew, but as she spoke, the dawn goddess's crystalline tears evaporated under the sunlight. Daphne stole a glance at Apollo, her eyes meeting his, for no reason. She felt he not only saw the vanishing dew but understood exactly when these flowers had been plucked. Apollo's expression didn't change, but his gaze seemed to soften. It was fleeting. She immediately thought it might be the gentle morning light playing tricks. I accept your flowers, he said. As a reward, I'll grant you one wish. Daphne blinked, confused. A reward? She'd only kept her word by showing up. But this was perfect. She put on a brave face, though she genuinely took a deep breath before uttering the crucial words, Apollo, Lord of sickness and health, I wish for you to heal my inability to wield the powers of the waters. As she said wish, a sharp, needle-like prick stabbed deep in her mind, sparking a tingling pain. If that were truly a sickness, it would have been cured when I healed the wounds Python left. Apollo replied. Daphne's surprise was genuine. She hadn't realized his earlier healing had been a divine panacea. Then, she bit her lip, letting disappointment show as was fitting, falling silent at the right moment. It was time. She forced a smile, lifting the vase higher with both hands. I had no right to expect more. Your acceptance of these flowers is reward enough. Apollo's gaze snapped skyward. In a flash, he put distance between them, his infallible silver bow materializing. He moved to draw it, then stopped himself, shouting coldly. Eros! The god of desire's playful chuckle echoed and faded, like a soft breeze grazing her ear. By the time his presence was felt, he was already impossible to trace. A clear twang of a bowstring sent the air trembling. Apollo dodged again, stopping to glance at his chest, his brow furrowing in confusion. You can dodge my arrows, but others can't. Eros's voice taunted. Apollo's pupils contracted sharply. He stood rigid, refusing to turn, as if that could deny the only possible truth. But time didn't wait for him to process. A heavy thud rang out from Daphne's position, followed by the crisp wail of shattering pottery. When Apollo glanced over, he saw the tail of an arrow embedded in the girl's chest, rapidly dissolving into golden dust, like vines sprouting or ice melting. Eros's golden arrow sank deep into Daphne's flesh before merging with her completely. In the instant it struck, her expression was blank. Then she shivered. Chapter 6. A high-stakes gamble with equal rewards and risks. Please pierce my heart with your golden arrow of love. Make me fall for him. As she made this request to the god of desire, Daphne's eyes flicked to the quiver on Eros's back. The quiver held 2 types of arrows, and she knew their effects. Golden arrows ignited passionate love, turning even bitter enemies into ardent lovers. Lead arrows hardened hearts, twisting even the fiercest devotion into indifference or hatred. Eros studied her for a moment, his charming smile sharpening into something prickly. An interesting idea, but I hope you truly understand what you're asking for. Don't underestimate a single arrow I shoot. A chill, like an electric shock, raced down her neck. Despite his usual laid-back demeanor, Eros was a true god. The gods of this world were powerful, capricious, and often cruel to weaker beings. He might not hurl a cliff to vent his anger like Apollo, but Daphne was certain he had countless ways to punish disrespect. I don't mean to belittle you. I know what I'm asking, Daphne said, taking a breath before laying it out. It's the best way I can think of to stay close to him. You already have a grudge against him. If I'm struck by your arrow, I'll look like an innocent victim. Even he might feel a twinge of pity and stop trying to chase me off. After all, it's harder to reject someone who genuinely adores you. It's a solid plan, but can you handle my golden arrow? Eros's smile faded. When discussing his power, he was deadly serious. Don't delude yourself into thinking you can control your emotions after being struck. Only fools try to distinguish between illusion and reality. The love my golden arrow sparks is no different from natural affection. My power is reality. You'll truly love him. Love him to the point of madness, unable to rest until you see him. Until the arrow's effect fades, only his embrace can fully ease the burning pain coursing through your veins. The boyish love god locked eyes with her. Let me be clear to pull this off. You'll pay with your true heart. She smiled. I don't think true feelings can be faked with acting, but I also don't believe a heart is so precious it can only be spent once in a lifetime. Her pale green eyes gleamed with a strange light, defiant and bright, as if challenging not Eros or Apollo, but the very weave of fortune and misfortune that shaped her life. She wanted to live, so she was willing to bet everything on a gamble with sky-high rewards and risks, to win a god's wholehearted devotion. How could I expect to walk away unscathed? I don't mind staking Daphne's true emotions as my wager, betting I'll roll a winning number in the end. Eros caught a detail and pressed. Daphne's, you are Daphne. But I'm also Cassandra, she said, lowering her gaze to her delicate, pale fingers, twirling a curl of golden hair with a faint shake of her head, as if still unaccustomed to this beautiful body. In the end, I'll be reborn as Cassandra. Daphne was more like a role she played in an immersive, near-real drama. Even if she wasn't the best actress, she'd perform until the final curtain fell, but only until then. A wicked grin crept back onto Eros's lips. She sensed sharp mockery in it. The god of desire clearly doubted she could separate the two identities. She even suspected he was already gloating over her inevitable confusion and struggle. So, Daphne, if you're madly in love with him, how will you break his heart later? Eros's question lilted upward. It felt like trading answers with a teacher who already knew the truth. Daphne blinked. Love can be incredibly painful. You'd know that better than I do. Eros paused, then chuckled with delight. I look forward to your performance. When the time is right, make your request, and I'll be there instantly. She blinked, confused. In a way, you're my special devotee. You offered your soul as tribute to wish for a second life. So, if you make a wish to another god, I'll sense it immediately. Div 26. The divine mechanics were beyond her grasp, but Daphne nodded. One more thing. Your arrow, it won't hurt much. Will it? Her last moments in her previous life were brief but felt like an eternity due to the searing pain. More than death itself, she feared physical agony. Eros winked, mischievously dodging the question. You'll find out when it happens. Now she knew. Lowering her gaze, she saw a golden arrow lodged in her chest. Its shimmering tail feathers quivered like a hummingbird's wings, each tremor dissolving another inch of the shaft into golden dust. Yet the strangest thing was she felt nothing. No pain, no fear, no tension, just blankness. An invisible thread tugged at her head and neck, turning her toward Apollo. The son of Leto was as handsome and majestic as ever, but something fundamental had shifted. Even with just his back to her, she couldn't look away. She didn't catch what Eros said to Apollo, her eyes fixed on him. The golden arrow took effect, starting with a faint ache. The foreign sensation in her chest grew sharper, her heart gripped and squeezed by an unseen hand, tightening relentlessly. Her breathing quickened. Joy and sorrow sprouted simultaneously from the gaps between those invisible fingers, growing slowly but steadily, entwining and binding her. The moment her eyes met Apollo's, boom, the vines burst into fiery blossoms. In that instant, she truly felt, for the first time, that she was Daphne, daughter of the river god Ladon. Her vision blurred under the emotional upheaval, missing Apollo's expression in that shared glance. Blinking, she finally saw clearly. His face was rigid, stern, with undisguised shock, as if she were a monster he had to muster all his strength to confront. Her fingertips and hair felt like they were burning, yet she shivered uncontrollably. Was it the calm blue of Apollo's eyes chilling her? Maybe not entirely. The vase had slipped from her hands at some point, its water splashing her feet, seeping through her shoes, cold and wet. The flowers she'd painstakingly gathered all night lay scattered among the pottery shards, their white petals stained with mud, jarringly vivid. This was the bouquet meant for him. Her throat tightened. She crouched, scrambling to salvage a few intact stems. Apollo's gaze still lingered on her, making her fingers tremble worse. In her haste, she grabbed a sharp pottery fragment, slicing a deep gash across her palm. Blood welled up, and she froze but didn't stop, hiding her injured hand behind her back to keep the salvaged flowers clean. In a flash, Apollo was before her. He yanked her to her feet, almost roughly, and seized her hidden wrist, pulling it forward despite her resistance. The cut wasn't deep, but blood coated her palm, looking gruesome. Apollo's brow furrowed, and his fingertips glowed with pure, radiant warmth. When the light faded, the wound was gone. Another miracle of healing. Daphne stared up at him, then broke into a radiant smile. The golden arrow's effect was undeniable, her unbridled love for Apollo pouring out, transforming her like a polished gem into dazzling brilliance. Her cheeks flushed pink, her eyes brighter, clearer, fixed solely on him, curved with joy, her pale pink lips arching in delight. Everything about her was breathtakingly vivid, his grip on her slender wrist pressed against her soft, warming skin, heated by her surging emotions. Apollo recoiled as if scalded, releasing her and stepping back. Daphne seemed to finally notice her own change, clutching her chest's fabric, stammering, "Apollo, I'll handle this." He touched her forehead, and a soothing, healing slumber enveloped her. She collapsed, soft and limp. Apollo caught her, hesitating awkwardly before carrying her stiffly, searching for a nearby boulder to set her down. Then he turned his gaze skyward. "Eros, you shouldn't drag an innocent girl into our feud. She's the daughter of Gaia and Ladon. Even you wouldn't want to make enemies of too many gods." The winged love god materialized, hovering above, grinning down at Apollo. "I only made her love you, not killed her. Hardly worth holding a grudge." Apollo's lips tightened. After a moment, he lowered his head, his voice stiff. "I apologize for my earlier insults. I was young and brash. I shouldn't have mocked your arrow's power. I've now felt your strength firsthand." So Eros cut him off. "Son of Leto, if you're apologizing, at least sound sincere." Apollo's body tensed, barely containing his anger. "If you remove that golden arrow, I'll make amends another way. Too late for regrets," Eros said, mimicking drawing a bow at Apollo, smirking as the god braced defensively. "Your silver bow never misses, but can you recall a shot arrow likewise? My golden and lead arrows can't be undone once loosed." A heavy silence fell. "But there's a simple solution," Eros continued, his tone lighter. Apollo's eyes flickered, his glare still hostile. "First option, since you're not the one struck. You could just abandon this pitiful nymph. My golden arrow will fade eventually, maybe months, years, or longer." But the mischievous god's tone shifted. "If she can't endure, if she dies of a broken heart or loses her mind before it wears off, whether you feel guilty is your problem. Of course, there's a second, simpler, happier solution. Return her love." Eros openly appraised the sleeping nymph on the boulder. Apollo instinctively shifted, blocking his view. Eros laughed harder. "I knew you'd pity a beautiful thing. I'm curious which path you'll choose. By the way, you should thank me for not picking a passing Cyclops as your suitor." Apollo snapped back to the point. Cold. "Even if I fall in love as you want, your revenge won't end there." "Of course not," Eros said, losing interest in negotiating. With a flap of his wings, he left a curt declaration. "Apollo, you'll pay for your arrogance. I keep my promises." As the sound of Eros's wings faded, Apollo looked down at Daphne. She slept defenselessly, looking unfamiliar, delicate and fragile, like a puppet without its animating soul, undeniably beautiful, but missing that vital spark. The body Gaia and Ladon gave Daphne was elegant, frail, lovely, but her spirit was the opposite wild, vibrant, alive. Only when her restless green eyes opened did she feel whole. Feral, luminous, brimming with life, like an arrow aimed straight at his heart, but it was too convenient, as if she'd appeared just to captivate him, only to be conveniently chosen by Eros as the arrow's target to torment him. A strange premonition pulsed at Apollo's temples, but he couldn't pinpoint what was off. He held the foundation of prophetic power omens tied to his fate shouldn't be this vague. Yet anything involving Daphne felt like a veil of thick fog had fallen over his sight. Doubly suspicious. Eros acted on whims, but a third party's involvement couldn't be ruled out. Plenty of gods wished him ill, including the goddess who shared Zeus's golden thrones, his longest companion, Queen Hera. When Apollo's mother, Leto, was pregnant, Hera's wrath forced her to wander the earth, unable to find a safe place to give birth. Only on Delos did she persuade the island's spirit to shelter her, allowing Apollo and Artemis to be born. When Apollo ascended Olympus and gained Zeus's recognition, Hera didn't even show up, straining his relationship with her son, Ares, the war god, to the point of near estrangement. As the goddess of marriage and family, Hera could easily exploit Eros's grudge against him. What other moves she might have remained unclear. Of course, this was all speculation. Daphne might truly be an innocent nymph, but instinct and reason both warned him to avoid entanglement with her. A romantic mess was one thing, but if she threatened his rightful power... At that thought, Apollo's face went blank. Beyond Eros's two options, there was a third, permanent solution. He reached out, his fingers resting on the girl's neck.